Well, hello there. If you'd like to learn how to transform yourself into Balloon Boy from Five Nights at Freddy's 2, keep on watching. After I block out my eyebrows, I like to map out my shape so I know where every color is going to go. I prefer a white eyeliner for this because it won't alter the colors I put on top of it. These lines don't have to be exact, they're just a guideline. Balloon Boy is very symmetrical, so mapping out your shapes will also ensure that everything is even before you add color. When doing any makeup, it's good to have a reference picture to look at so you can make things as accurate and proportionate as possible. Now on to mapping out his body. Balloon Boy's body is roughly the same width as his head, so keep that in mind when deciding where to place your lines. When drawing in the stripes on Balloon Boy's shirt, remember that his body is round. The stripes in the middle appear widest and they get thinner and thinner as they wrap around the curve of his body. Now for the color. Balloon Boy has a peachy orange skin tone, so I mixed Wolfe's Orange and Rich Ivory water activated face paints for a custom shade. Fill in all the spaces between the mapped out shapes, overlapping the white lines just a bit. This is when you really start to refine your shapes. And don't forget to fill in his neck. Add a bit more orange to the color mix and fill in his nose. Add in some pink from Wolfe to the mix so you can fill in his rosy cheeks. With the primary blue from Wolfe, start filling in the stripes on Balloon Boy's hat. Use red to fill in the two remaining stripes on his hat. Red pigment can be kind of finicky, so you may need a few layers for it to look even. Now that you look like a soulless clown, it's time for the stripes of his shirt. Start filling in the red ones. The stripes will be thinnest at the top and gradually get wider since Balloon Boy's body curves outward. To get the cleanest lines, it's best to use long, smooth brush strokes. Now fill in all the gaps of your mapped out lines with that same primary blue shade of water activated face paint from Wolfe. The great thing about water activated face paints is that once they're dry, they won't mix together, so it's okay if you overlap the red stripes a bit. Using a gray water-activated face paint from Wolfe, fill in Balloon Boy's two buttons on the center of his shirt. Then go back in with your blue and fill in the negative space around the buttons. Now using a black water-activated face paint from Diamond FX, fill in your shoulders and the sides of your neck. Using an angled paintbrush will really help get those lines nice and crisp. Take your time when outlining Balloon Boy's neck to ensure it's as straight as possible. Using the same mix of orange and rich ivory from Wolfe, paint in very thin crescent shapes for Balloon Boy's eyelids. Now fill in the general area where Balloon Boy's teeth are going to be with white from Diamond FX. Using that same white, fill in the whites of Balloon Boy's eyes, but leave the area roughly where the iris will be empty. I like to save the eyes and mouth for last because those are the areas that are most likely to crease since they move the most. Balloon Boy has perfectly round eyes since he's an animatronic, so be patient and try to get the eyes as circular as possible. Use an eyeliner or a fine brush to start to define the teeth. Balloon Boy isn't exactly anatomically correct. He has one center tooth, and all his teeth are roughly the same size and shape. Fill in the negative space of the mouth with black from Diamond FX. You may want to switch to a smaller detailing brush to get around the small curves of his teeth. Balloon Boy has a brownish gumline area, so I mixed some brown from Wolfe into my skin tone mixture and applied it right around the edges of the mouth. Now on to shading. I used a light gray from Morphe's 35C palette to start shading around his hat and cheeks, but any gray eyeshadow will work. Balloon Boy's stripes get darker where the colors meet, so use a slightly darker gray to start shading between the stripes. Since Balloon Boy's neck and the top of his body are so much smaller than his head, they're very shadowed, so add a lot of the gray in these areas. Use the same gray eyeshadow to shade between his hat stripes and to add a darker shadow underneath his hat. The stripes on Balloon Boy's clothing have a very bright highlight in the center, so use a white eyeshadow to brighten just the center of every stripe. The one I'm using is from the Morphe 35C palette. I used this shade to highlight his cheeks as well. Use the same gray from earlier to outline his nose. Balloon Boy's nose is a bit upturned, so use a brown eyeshadow to shade the upper part of his nose, then highlight right below that with white. Use an eyeliner or a fine brush to define the crease where Balloon Boy's nose connects to his face. Define the edge of his hat with a thick black outline. Balloon Boy's cheeks are separate 3D pieces attached to his face, so outline your circles very thinly. Outline his buttons, focusing on the bottom half since that's where the shadow is cast. Use a white eyeliner to highlight the lip of the buttons, the tip of his nose, and the tops of his cheeks. Shade the top, corners, and bottom of his mouth with a light gray eyeshadow. Outline those same areas with a fine brush or eyeliner. Add a thicker outline just in the corners. To give Balloon Boy his plastic sheen, highlight right around his mouth and between his eyes with white. Paint in his irises with a mix of blue and white water-activated face paints, then set them with a teal eyeshadow. Use a deeper teal eyeshadow to shade just the outside of the irises. Use a brown eyeshadow to shade underneath and in the corners of his eyelids. Add in Balloon Boy's eye sockets with a black eyeshadow. His eye sockets aren't perfectly round. They're a bit square in the upper inner corners and the outer lower corners. Use a light gray eyeshadow to shade the eyes in the upper inner corners and the outer lower corners. To add a bit more depth to Balloon Boy's eyes, outline his eyelids and eye sockets with an eyeliner, focusing on those squared corners. Use white to highlight the peaks of his eyelids. To get a perfectly round pupil, I like to use an eyeliner cap as a dotting tool. You can use an eyeliner as a dotting tool for the bright catch lights in his eyes. Add some highlights right around his eye sockets, and you're done! Thank you for watching my Balloon Boy from Five Nights at Freddy's 2 tutorial. If you'd like to see more of my work, check me out on Instagram, @It'sGottaBeSarahC, and I'll see you next time.